It's all dragons all the way down thanks to Tarkir Dragonstorm, and that means the Dragon is back in season. The daddy of all dragons, the definitive dragon commander. But with a set dedicated to dragons, where do they fit into this already overstuffed deck? It's all about the best of the best, so let's start with the best of the best dragon commander. The Dragon is a 9-mana, 5-color, 10/10 dragon avatar that has Eminence. That means, on the battlefield or in the command zone, other dragon spells cost you 1 less to cast. When he's in play, he has flying and says whenever 1 or more dragons you control attack, draw that many cards, then you may put a permanent card from your hand onto the battlefield. So, unsurprisingly, the Daddy Dragon makes your dragons cheaper and, if you ever get him into play, draws you cards and pulls free dragons onto the battlefield. But there is a big, glaring problem here. The Dragon is 5 colors, making every dragon ever printed viable for inclusion. How would we ever choose which to put in the deck? Also a problem, 5-color decks are rarely cheap as they require the most intense mana bases. Sure, cards like Prismatic Omen or Chromatic Lantern help, but you can't be certain you'll ever draw those. So, lands like Shocks or Triomes are some of the best, generic, and tutorable lands in the format. But they are expensive for most players. Should we get around this or lean into it? In this brew, I'll look at the best of the best, including fetches, but stopping short of true dual lands. We aren't made of money here. Before we take a look at how we're building the definitive dragon deck, be sure to hit that subscribe button, and like this video to make sure you never miss a brew. First, let's start with the big question. How expensive is a 5-color mana base? Let's look at it 2 ways, maximum power and a budget stretch. For the top of the power curve, you can use true duals, but that's ridiculously expensive. If you own some true duals, shout out in the comments, but these aren't necessary to run a 5-color deck. Just nice to have is all. What I would consider necessary for a 5-color deck are the Triomes. These 3-colored lands are souped up versions of the uncommon versions of the same lands with 2 differences. The first thing being that Triomes cycle. If you're flooding out on lands or you top deck a Triome rather than a dragon, you can pay 3 and try again. That's great when you're in late game and have more mana than you can imagine, but maybe not all the card draw to keep your hand full, especially if you're trying to recover from a board wipe. The second benefit being that they have basic land types. If something lets you grab a forest, like a 3 visits, you can grab a Triome with a forest subtype. And that's, let me check my notes, oh yes, very good. That's why the Shock lands and the new Surveil lands are very good too. They can be fetched. They also enable 2 other types of lands much better, the Check lands and the Verges. These need to have lands with basic land types in play in order to fully function, and they do it better than any other option. The versatility of the Shock lands coming into play untapped, if you can eat 2 damage, is a big upside as well. And on the topic of fetchable, are the fetch lands required in a 5-color deck. Again, they are nice to have and smooth your color requirements a lot, but they're pricey. Lands make the best long-term investment in your collection as well, since they'll be usable forever too. These options are expensive and are nice to work towards, but are they necessary? I would say no, they're not. See, the cheaper options are the uncommon Tri-lands rather than the Triomes, Pain lands rather than Shock lands, and the Tango lands rather than the Surveil lands. See, if we're looking at a cheaper mana base, we're using more basics, so not only are the Tango lands more likely to enter untapped, they're fetchable as well. Win-win. The Capenna fetches, as pale imitations they are of the original fetches, make great substitutions for the real fetch lands, as well as make you work your way up towards those more expensive options. And remember that Terramorphic Expanse and Evolving Wilds are still good if you need to meet specific color requirements. The other question I get is how necessary are 5-color producing lands like Mana Confluence and City of Brass. They're certainly good lands and they help you meet your color requirements easily, but keep in mind that Path of Ancestry, Unclaimed Territory, and Secluded Courtyard all exist too. We're playing a dragon deck. Naming dragon with any of these Kindred lands nets us 5 colors to cast dragons, and that's just as good. But for the sake of my list today, we'll be looking at the ideal. So fetch lands, Triomes, and Shock lands. the whole 9 yards. Just cross your fingers you don't run into somebody playing a Blood Moon or a Back to Basics. The last mana-based question I've been getting most recently: is the new Mox Jasper necessary in a dragon deck? My answer is no, not at all. Remember, it does nothing until you're already casting dragons and only gets you 1 mana ahead. You're much better served including some of the following cards instead. Speaking of which, let's start with the non-dragons in this dragon deck, and there aren't that many. Any non-dragon creatures in the list should help reduce the cost of our dragons even further. Dragonlord Servant, Dragonspeaker Shaman, and Sarkhan's Soul of Flame all discount your dragons by 1 to 2 mana in combination with the Dragon, making your dragons cost just 2 to 3 mana for the most part, and that's very, very good. Ravaz of the Claw is another great dragon enabler, where instead of discounting your dragon costs, allowing you to cast multiple dragons a turn on the cheap, it instead makes you 2 mana on tap for your dragon spell specifically, in addition to letting you cast dragons from your graveyard each turn. That's all upside. And the last non-dragon in the list is a new personal favorite of mine, Temur Battlecrier. This 3 mana 4/3 discounts all spells you cast by 1 for each creature you control with power 4 or greater. Since it itself has 4 power, that's a minimum of 1 mana discount on all spells you cast, but as you get more and more dragons into play, it's more and more of a discount. Hard to pass that one up. While we're on the topic of cost reducers, there's 2 more I'd recommend: Urza's Incubator and Herald's Horn. Providing a steep discount to your dragons and letting you potentially draw an extra dragon each turn are just too good to pass up, and between your commander and just 1 to 2 of these discounting effects, you could be pouring dragons from your hand onto the battlefield every turn. Herald's Horn can't be our only card draw though, so let's rely on 2 things we're going to have en masse in this deck: dragons and power. Vanquisher's Banner and a few discounting effects can turn us into a kind of elf ball deck for dragons. A Dragon Ball deck, if you would. Playing a dragon, drawing a dragon, playing another dragon, in addition to being an Anthem effect too. Kindred Discovery gives us this effect as well, but draws us cards on attack. Well worth the 5 mana for both effects, as they'll keep our hands full with no other effects to speak of. But we could use cards like Temur Ascendancy, Garruk's Uprising, and Elemental Bond to draw off our big beefy boys. All these 4+ power creatures can be drawing us multiple cards a turn. Rule the battlefield and the tempo game with advantages on top of advantages. Up the Beanstalk is another great include too, as the majority of our dragons will cost more than 5 mana, with the ability to draw us more off of our non-dragon 5+ mana spells too. If we really want to push our card draw higher, we can include the Great Henge and Guardian Project in the list too, but that's only if you find your games insufficient from a card draw standpoint. The only downside is that they'll likely be coming down after you're able to cast dragons rather than before. They're both very good includes though. All of this card draw combined with the new Dracogenesis means we could be getting a lot of free creatures into play. We've discounted our dragons, sure, but getting them for free means we can cycle through our entire deck for free. Combine 1 or 2 of these draw effects with Dracogenesis, and you will churn through your whole library. Meaning we really need to include cards like Temur Ascendancy and Dragon Tempest to give our dragons haste. If we're pouring dragons onto the battlefield, let's make sure we close out the game either with damage from the Tempest or with the ensuing attack. And our board wipes should ideally leave our dragons unscathed, which is where I'm including Crux of Fate and Kindred Dominance as our 2 sculptable board wipes, leaving our entire board untouched. I think it's worthwhile to include Blasphemous Act and Vanquish the Horde too, for those instances where you absolutely need everything dead. Blasphemous Edict fits this role as well if your pod is the kind of pod where you need to reset the board regularly and need to deal with indestructible creatures. Our big win con in the deck, apart from attacking and burninating the countryside, is the new Call the Spirit Dragons. This is a game ender in this list, a win con and a remove or lose card for your opponents that makes all board wipes one-sided. It says, dragons you control have indestructible, and at the beginning of your upkeep for each color, put a +1/+1 counter on a dragon you control of that color. If you put a +1/+1 counter on 5 dragons this way, you win the game. So not only are your dragons near impossible to remove now, but as long as you control 5 dragons of 5 colors in your upkeep, you win the game. This is a deck that's going to have more than enough dragons to achieve that. It's just a matter of whether you can meek it to your upkeep with them in play or not. Okay, Chris, let's get to the fireworks factory already. Let's talk dragons. This is the biggest choice we have to make. Currently, we have room for over 30 dragons in our dragons deck, and we need some real decisions on which of Magic's hundreds of dragons deserve a spot. And I want to prioritize utility. Dragons that do more than just be dragon are what we should include. And here's where we need to look at dragons with spells attached to them, like the Omens and Adventures. Scavenger Regent, for instance, has another one-sided board wipe stapled to it in the form of Exude Toxin. This lets us shrink all non-dragon creatures and shuffle him back into our deck while still being a 4-mana 4/4 flying ward discard a card when cast for potentially only 1 mana. There's no way this doesn't earn a spot in the deck. We also have Decadent Dragon, which is a 4-mana 4/4 flying trampler that makes a treasure token on attack while also sometimes being able to nab cards off the top of an opponent's library. Both incredible utility. Dragonlord Silumgar is a control magic on enters, which takes the biggest threat off of your opponent's board until Silumgar leaves play. This can clear blockers or just make the biggest baddie on the playground yours for a while. And any dragon that helps make more mana is crucial too, like Old Gnawbone, Ancient Copper Dragon, or Goldspan Dragon. Dragons love their treasures, and so should you. The curve of this deck isn't low by any means, even with all of our cost discounters, and getting these treasure generators up and running is essential. Cavern Horde Dragon is one of my favorites here too, as not only does it help discount itself with a few of our artifacts out, but as a creature with flying, trample, and haste, it's a surprise punch to any opponent, then making you a treasure for each artifact that opponent controls. Ouch. Then let's include some of the best alternate dragon commanders in the 99. Miram, who gets you twice as many dragons, Tiamat, who tutors you 5 more dragons, and Morophon the Boundless, who is technically a dragon and discounts the colored mana costs of your dragons. These 3 are all massive bombs on their own, but if you manage to slam one of them into play before getting your other dragons online, you are headed to Value Town. And speaking of your commander, the only realistic way we're getting him into play is by cheating the Dragon in with a Hellkite Courser. For just 6 mana, reduced to 5 by your commander, you get to sneak attack the Dragon into play with haste, letting you get his Reveal Dragons trigger for free. That can be a whole whack of free value and an unexpected 10/10 flyer to the dome for one lucky player. Then, because this is a Dragon Kindred deck, let's include more dragons that care about dragons. Lathlis, Dragon Queen, and Utvara Hellkite make us more dragons based on our other dragons entering or attacking respectively, so naturally they belong in the deck. Atarka World Render gives all our dragons double strike on attack, which is a no-brainer game ender, include even on 7 mana body. Silumgar, the Drifting Death, can be a one-sided board wipe on attack with a couple of other dragons, shrinking all creatures the defending players control for each attacking dragon. Scourge of Valkus throws around some serious damage too, either directly at an opponent or at anything they control, equal to the amount of dragons you control, giving it great utility on top of being a fire-breathing 4/4. Wrathful Red Dragon ensures that any of your dragons taking damage from any source, maybe even a Blasphemous Act, means you can throw that damage around at any other non-dragon source. This is a great way to throw a boatload of damage around when blocking too. Ganax, Astral Hunter, makes us more treasures when it or other dragons you control enter. Note that this isn't non-token dragons entering, so Lathlis and Utvara Hellkite can make you some real bank. And the new Broodcolor Scourge is a great way for your dragons connecting with opponents to let you sneak more dragons onto the battlefield. This can get really snowbally when you have even 2 to 3 dragons dealing some damage. Thrakis the Butcher doubles all of our other dragons' power on attack, which synergizes with, like, everything else going on, and can end games fast, especially if he comes down with haste unexpectedly. And smaller dragons like Corlessa Scalesinger lets us cast our dragons from the top of our library too, resulting in some pseudo-card advantage to let us snowball faster and faster. With room for even a few more dragons left, what do we include? Let's look at Scourge of the Throne. a dragon that gets you another combat if you attack the player on the throne, a great bonus even with 1 to 2 other dragons on the field. Hellkite Charger, along the same lines, by paying 7 mana on attack we get an extra combat. With all these dragons that make us treasures, we may even be able to go infinite with this guy on one of these treasure dragons alone. A flexible to cast smaller dragon like Shivan Devastator is a great add, as our commander makes him a 1/1 for 1, but he only scales higher and higher with our mana and other dragon discounting effects, making for a terrifying threat at any stage of the game. Two-Headed Hellkite is a good include too, a 6 mana, 5 color, 5/5 flying menace haste that draws 2 cards on attack and may be completely free with a Morifying the Boundless out, can't be beat. And I think Scion of Draco deserves a nod here too, seeing as how it could potentially only cost 2 mana with just 2 Triomes out, any 2 that cover all 5 basic land types like an Indatha Triome and a Ketria Triome, resulting in a 2 mana 4/4 flyer that gives all your other dragons bonus abilities. Terror of the Peaks is also a recent classic that gets us some extra reach out of our dragons even if we can't attack. It throws around 4, 5, 6 or more damage when our dragons enter the battlefield, while also having Ward 3 life on top of it. Let's finish our dragon roster with Twin Flame Tyrant, a dragon that doubles all of our damage to opponents. Why not just casually whack an opponent for 8 instead of 4 on a surprise attack? Turns an attacking board of 15 power into a potential 30 damage really fast and earns itself a spot in the list. Finish off our deck with some crucial mana artifacts like Chromatic Lantern, Dragon's Horde, and Carnelian Orb of Dragonkind, and we can safely cast all of our best dragons with these ways to make any kind of mana we want. Hands to keep would need to include some card draw and some ramp and at least 1 dragon. With 40 lands in the deck, keeping a hand of 3 lands, a rock, a card draw spell, and 1 to 2 dragons is a great way to ensure you're going to be laughing to a victory. If I were to pivot this deck a bit, I may add more gotcha style spells to prevent my dragons from being wiped out. Heroic Intervention, Teferi's Protection, and Porch Protection all being good options. And if I did get blown out by a board wipe, finding room for a Patriarch's Bidding would be a fantastic way to immediately bring all your baddies back from the graveyard all at once. Just hope you can give them haste at the same time. Any upgrades or game changers in the deck would have to be in the form of mana. Ancient Tomb, Chrome Mox, and Mana Vault all help you rocket ahead a few turns and getting an 8 mana dragon down on turn 4. With a Curve's average mana value over 4, before factoring in the Dragon's discount mind you, your mana production is your biggest opponent in this deck. Solve for that and you are laughing. Tell me though, did I miss your favorite dragons? Any spells you'd consider must-haves in a dragon deck like this? Let me know in the comments. Check out the full list linked in the description at my sponsor, MOXFIELD. MOXFIELD is the best deck building platform in the world and makes it easy to build decks to specific brackets thanks to their built-in automated bracket detection tools. Never misjudge your decks again, and be sure to follow my profile to never miss any of my brews. If you want to pick up any of the cards for this list, be sure to go to Card Trader. Use my promo code MECHANIC now for 5% off your orders from any TCG. Card Trader's zero system means you can get cards from all over the world with only 1 shipping fee. Save money and time today. And if you want to sell off your cards, whether they be unused or just duplicates, go to Card Conduit. If you're selling out of anything from Pokemon to Star Wars to Magic, get premium rates for your cards. Ship them unsorted today and get a check in the mail. If you were inspired to brew, you have to hit that subscribe button. Be a gem and check out some of the other videos on the channel right now too. And as always, good luck and have fun!